They said he was too old. They didn't even bother to read his full resume. But when danger struck their doorstep, the 67-year-old man became their only hope. What happened next shocked everyone, and what they discovered about his past will leave you speechless. Before we dive into this incredible story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from around the world, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because stories like this one will blow your mind. John Mitchell had always been a man of few words. At 67, his silver hair was neatly combed, his posture straight despite the years, and his handshake firm enough to command respect. When he walked into the gleaming lobby of Pinnacle Corporate Solutions that Tuesday morning, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of someone who had nothing left to prove to the world. The job posting had been simple enough. Security guard. Night shift. Basic requirements. John figured it would be perfect for someone like him, looking to stay busy in retirement, maybe earn a little extra to supplement his pension. He'd spent weeks perfecting his application, carefully crafting his resume to highlight relevant experience without overwhelming potential employers with details they might not understand or appreciate. The interview lasted exactly 12 minutes. John sat across from Sarah Chen, the HR director, a woman in her early 30s who seemed more interested in her phone than in the man sitting before her. She glanced at his resume with the kind of superficial attention you'd give a grocery list. "Mr. Mitchell," she began, not even looking up, "I have to be honest with you. We're looking for someone a bit more energetic. Someone who can handle the physical demands of the job. You understand?" John nodded slowly. He'd heard this before. "I understand you have concerns about my age, but I assure you, I'm quite capable of handling whatever this position requires." Sarah finally looked up, offering a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure you are, but we've decided to go with someone younger. Someone who fits better with our company culture. Thank you for your time." As John walked out of that building, he felt the familiar sting of age discrimination. It wasn't the first time, and he suspected it wouldn't be the last. Companies saw the number on his driver's license and made assumptions. They saw gray hair and thought fragility. They saw retirement age and assumed incompetence. What they didn't see, because they didn't bother to look beyond the first page of his resume, was a lifetime of service that would have made their heads spin. They didn't see the 28 years in the military, the multiple tours of duty, the special forces training, or the Medal of Honor that sat quietly in a box in his bedroom closet. They didn't see the man who had stared down armed insurgents in Afghanistan, who had led rescue missions in hostile territory, who had saved more lives than he could count. But John didn't tell them any of that. He never did. In his mind, true strength didn't need to announce itself. Real courage didn't require a press conference. A man's worth wasn't measured by the medals on his chest or the stories he could tell, but by his actions when it mattered most. 3 days later, John was having coffee at a small cafe 2 blocks from Pinnacle Corporate Solutions when he heard the screams. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. The lunch crowd had thinned out, and the office buildings were settling into their afternoon rhythm. That's when Marcus Webb, a 23-year-old with more anger than sense and a loaded handgun, decided to take his frustrations out on the world. Marcus had been fired from Pinnacle 3 months earlier for repeated absences and attitude problems. Since then, his life had spiraled into a mess of unpaid bills, failed relationships, and growing resentment. He blamed everyone but himself for his problems, and today, he decided that Pinnacle Corporate Solutions was going to pay. He burst through the glass doors of the lobby with the kind of wild-eyed rage that turns ordinary people into nightmares. The young security guard, Tyler, barely 22 and 3 weeks into the job, froze like a deer in headlights. His hand went to his radio, but fear made his fingers clumsy. By the time he managed to press the panic button, Marcus was already screaming at the receptionist, waving his gun at anyone who moved. Chaos erupted instantly. Employees dove under desks, others ran for emergency exits, phones scattered across marble floors as people scrambled for safety. The modern office space, with its open floor plan and glass walls, offered little protection. Within seconds, what had been a normal Tuesday afternoon became a scene from everyone's worst nightmares. Tyler, the security guard who had gotten the job John was denied, stood paralyzed behind his desk. All his training evaporated in the face of real danger. He was supposed to be the protector, the first line of defense, but all he could do was shake as Marcus's attention turned toward him. That's when John Mitchell walked through the door. He'd heard the commotion from the cafe and moved toward the sound of trouble with the kind of calm purposefulness that only comes from decades of training. While everyone else was running away from danger, John was walking straight into it. He assessed the situation in seconds. One gunman, emotionally unstable, weapon held incorrectly, attention scattered. Approximately 30 civilians in immediate danger, most already seeking cover. One young security guard, clearly overwhelmed and potentially about to make things worse. John didn't announce himself. He didn't shout or try to negotiate. Instead, he moved with the fluid precision of someone who had done this dance many times before, in places far more dangerous than a corporate lobby. Marcus never saw him coming. In one smooth motion, John closed the distance between them, his movements so quick and controlled that Marcus didn't have time to react. Years of Special Forces training kicked in as John disarmed the gunman with techniques that were muscle memory. The weapon clattered across the floor, and Marcus found himself face down on the marble, John's knee in his back and his arm twisted at an angle that made resistance impossible. "It's over," John said quietly, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made even the panicked civilians stop and listen. "Everyone stay where you are until police arrive." The entire confrontation lasted less than 90 seconds. As sirens wailed in the distance, John kept Marcus pinned with minimal effort, speaking to him in the same calm tone he'd used in the interview just days before. "Easy now. Nobody needs to get hurt today. You made some bad choices, but it doesn't have to get worse." When the police arrived, they found a scene under complete control. The gunman was subdued, the weapon secured, and the civilians were safe. The young security guard was still shaking behind his desk, staring at John with a mixture of awe and confusion. Later, as police took statements and paramedics checked on shaken employees, Sarah Chen finally took a real look at John Mitchell's resume. This time, she read past the basic information, past the simple job titles, and into the details that painted the picture of an extraordinary man. 28 years of military service. Multiple combat deployments. Special Forces qualification. Congressional Medal of Honor for actions in Afghanistan, where he single-handedly held off an enemy assault while evacuating wounded soldiers. Decorated veteran. Expert marksman. Leadership commendations that filled 2 pages. The man they had dismissed as too old had just saved their entire office with skills they couldn't have imagined. When a reporter asked John later why he hadn't mentioned his military background during the interview, his answer was simple and profound: age doesn't erase what a man's capable of. Only ignorance does. He wasn't bitter about the rejection. He wasn't angry about the assumptions. He was simply stating a truth that our society too often forgets. We live in a world obsessed with youth, where experience is dismissed and wisdom is undervalued. We see gray hair and assume decline. We see retirement age and assume irrelevance. But John Mitchell proved something that day. He proved that true capability isn't measured in years. Real strength isn't about how young you look in a photograph. Genuine competence comes from experience, training, and character, things that don't diminish with age but actually grow stronger. The company offered John the security position the next day, along with a significant salary increase and a formal apology. He politely declined. Not out of spite, but because he'd already proven his point. Besides, he'd received 3 other job offers by Thursday, including one from a firm that actually read resumes completely before making decisions. John Mitchell's story reminds us that in our rush to embrace the new and the young, we often overlook the incredible value of experience and wisdom. Every day, qualified older workers face discrimination based not on their abilities, but on assumptions about their limitations. We see their age before we see their accomplishments. We notice their retirement eligibility before we recognize their expertise. But as John proved that day in the Pinnacle Corporate Solutions lobby, age doesn't erase capability. It refines it. Experience doesn't make you obsolete. It makes you invaluable. And sometimes, the person you dismiss without a second thought might just be the person you need most when everything falls apart. The next time you're tempted to make assumptions based on age, remember John Mitchell. Remember that behind every gray hair might be stories of courage you can't imagine. Behind every wrinkle might be wisdom that could save your life. And behind every older worker's application might be exactly the experience and competence your organization desperately needs. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one, And let me know in the comments what you think about age discrimination in today's workplace.